actually recording this episode on Thursday, late morning, early afternoon for a Friday morning release. So at the time of our recording, Biden has not yet given his State of the Union address. So we're not going to be talking about that today. And frankly, I'm okay with that because I'm sure it's going to be all about Trump and the MAGA threat to democracy. And it's just going to be another completely hypocritical Dark Brandon speech like his last one. And honestly, like the thought of having to listen to him ramble incoherently for an entire speech is completely unappealing to me. But Stephanie, I have to ask, did you see that he had this recent, like even more bizarre than usual senior moment where he totally blanked out and told reporters that he would get in trouble if he answered their questions?
Yeah, I was watching the video and it was like a total Mitch McConnell moment because he was just staring like very blank, like it looked like he was having an episode or something. And I was like, is he okay? Is he gonna like stroke out? Yeah, it was bad. So can you imagine what they're gonna do for this speech? They're gonna like pump him full of adrenaline or something.
They're gonna have to. And it's like, so if you guys didn't see it, this was on Tuesday, and he was doing a photo op and talking about like his new cost of living task force. And reporters started to ask questions. And I was reading this in the Washington Times. He said, quote, I have a lot of questions. I better not start the questions. I'll get in trouble, end quote. And then he apparently like took a question from the Associated Press and then moved on to a reporter from Bloomberg, but he cut her off and said, quote, I'm sorry, I'm going to get in trouble with staff if I don't do this the right way, end quote. And like he puts the microphone down and like Stephanie said, he was like a deer in headlights, frozen for like 15 seconds. And the reporters are shouting questions at him. And then he just kind of mutters something inaudible and like leaves the room. And like, honestly, Stephanie, how is he going to get through the State of the Union? Like you just said, how much adrenaline can they possibly pump into this guy to get through the entire State of the Union? And you know it's going to be a total shit show. But I did see that Trump is going to do a live play-by-play on Truth Social while the address is going on. So you know that's going to be hilarious.
I love comparing the two because it's like night and day. And it's just crazy. Like I think because he always says like, "Oh, I'm gonna get in trouble." Biden
Mhm.
says that, and I feel like that's like his safe word. And that's because then his staff, I don't know if you heard them in the background, but they start yelling and they're like, "Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming." And they start like shooing the reporters out. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, could you imagine if Trump's staff did that? He'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like I say when I'm going to stop talking, you know? And it's just the whole thing is so ridiculous. And it's actually kind of sad because it's like this poor guy is like, he has no idea what's going on. He's so gone and clearly he's senile and they keep bringing him out there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see this speech tonight.
Yeah, and I sad is the perfect word. And if he wasn't so dangerous, if this agenda wasn't so dangerous, I could think it's more funny, but
Right.
no. Yeah, it's just no, the whole thing's terrible. But
Yeah.
we're not talking about that today. We're
Yeah.
going to
Fuck
talk
Biden.
about, yeah, fuck Biden. Today, we're going to talk about some equally disturbing things that are going on in the world of the trans agenda. And so, this was like a big deal that occurred this week. There is an organization called the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And this is a group of doctors and hospitals and critics. And they basically determine healthcare for both child and adult gender reassignment surgery. And this group has like significant include. Oh my gosh, as usual, I can't talk. Fuck me. Will we ever have a single episode where I don't fuck up my
No, it's
words?
like your thing, you know?
This
Everyone's
is what
like, oh, which
happens
word is
when
she gonna mess up today? No, I'm just kidding.
this is what happens when you get old, okay? So anyway,
You're
so
not
this
that old. Come on.
I'm getting there. I'm starting to have my own senior moments, unfortunately. But so this group, they have a lot of influence with like American medicine. They make recommendations to the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychiatric Association, the AMA, and the Endocrine Society. And so on Tuesday, I was reading this in the Daily Caller, but it's in like multiple outlets. And there's a nonprofit research group called Environmental Progress, and they expose leaked documents from the, I'm going to call it the WPATH organization. And it's like very damning evidence about complete fucking negligence and illegal procedures being formed on children. And so Michael Schellenberger is part of this group, and he's one of the journalists that exposed the Twitter files, and he posted all of this on X. And so you can read the actual files, and there are full videos on environmentalprogress.org. But according to the article, there were actually, the article showed screenshots of these conversations between doctors, and they were covering for each other. And there's like a process apparently that requires two surgeons to give signed authorization before a minor female can have her breasts removed. And the documentation clearly showed that one doctor promised he would help write a second letter if it was necessary to get approval for surgery, even though he had never fucking treated the patient at all. And the article states, quote, throughout the report and transcript of video meetings, the world's top minds in transgender medicine agree that there is simply no way minors can give informed consent to be placed on hormone blockers, cross-sex hormones, or even surgeries that remove healthy sex organs, such as breasts, penises, and uteruses. So I want to play a clip from one of their video chats because it's really fucking disturbing.
I think the thing you have to remember about kids is that we're often explaining these sorts of things to people who haven't even had biology in high school yet, and I know I've heard others in this kind of a setting say, well, we think adults are like really slick biologically, and in fact, lots of people have very little medical understanding of stuff like that. We just medical professionals and mental health professionals take for granted. But I don't know still what to do for the 14-year-olds. The parents have it on their minds, but the 14-year-olds, it's like talking with diabetic complications with a 14-year-old. They don't care. They're not going to die. They're going to live forever, right? So I think when we're doing informed consent, I know that that's still a big lacuna.
Like, what the fuck?
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like child abuse. And what I want to know is, let's say a 14-year-old walks into a plastic surgeon and says, I want to have a boob job. Like, they wouldn't say yes, right? Like they wouldn't do that. And so why are we allowing this? I mean, you can't even get a tattoo. You can't vote. You can't buy a pack of cigarettes. So why would you be able to make this life-altering change? And I tried to find it. I couldn't find the clip, but remember that Matt Walsh guy that works for Daily Wire, and he did like that What is a Woman documentary? I think it was someone on his team that was posing as a parent that had a child that was like 14 or 15 that wanted to change their gender and like go through the surgery. And they did a video call with this woman at a clinic and never saw the person face to face. It was all virtual. And she wrote a letter within like 10 minutes of meeting this guy to assign, like, to say, yes, you can have your surgery, knowing nothing about his health history, not asking any mental health questions. And again, it's like, how is this not child abuse? How are these people not locked up and put away? It's mutilation. It's like, it's so fucked up. And these kids, just like you said, they have no way of looking into the future. They don't have that cognitive ability yet to think about what's going to happen in 10 years or 20 years or whatever. So it's just sick.
Yeah. And these doctors are straight out admitting that these kids are not developmentally capable of understanding what they're doing to themselves by mutilating their bodies, but they go ahead and do the surgeries and these treatments anyway. Like, that is fucking criminal. And let's add developmentally delayed children to the mix, because the article also showed a document and it was titled Ethical Inquiry Adolescent. And in the document, the doctor asked, quote, in a developmentally delayed 13-year-old adolescent currently on pubertal suppression that may not reach the emotional and cognitive development bar set by the SOC within the typical adolescent time frame, if at all, what is the ethical approach to care? Question mark. Like, how about fucking mental health treatment and no fucking gender reassignment surgery?
Yeah, and they're finding that a lot of these kids are autistic,
Mhm.
and that's not taken into consideration. And then the other thing is a lot of kids that are wanting to do these types of things are victims of some type of sexual abuse, and that's
Yeah.
not addressed at all. So you have like two major concerns that should be addressed absolutely first before you even talk about this kind of stuff. And they're completely dismissing it, and they're going right to medications or surgery. And I do want to point out that the medications are just as harmful. They can
Yeah.
cause long-term effects. And what they're telling people is, oh, well, it's puberty blockers or whatever, but as soon as you stop taking it, you'll just go through puberty as normal if you decide to. They don't know that. They don't know that. They're just saying that.
They don't know that, and they admitted as much in this fucking case. Like,
Ugh.
the documents show that the president of this organization, Marcy Bowers, she admitted that there have not been any adequate studies to show the effects of puberty blockers on fertility or on sexual satisfaction as children become adults. And she admitted that they, quote, do not how children will be impacted later in life. Like these documents give multiple case studies. You've got prolonged use of cross-sex hormones that have been resulting in major medical issues. One case study was reported as a quote young patient, and this female patient developed pelvic inflammatory disease after 3 years of taking testosterone. And I won't go into the very graphic details, but you can read them in the article, and it's really fucking disturbing. Another 16-year-old patient developed large liver tumors after being on treatment to suppress menstruation for several years and was also on testosterone for a year. Another female died from developing liver cancer that was linked to 8 to 10 years of testosterone treatment. And we've talked in the past about how gender reassignment surgery results in like loss of sexual function and the ability to orgasm and all sorts of medical complications. And if you're an adult and you want to take those risks and make that decision, like that's your choice, right? But these doctors are admitting they don't know the risks for children, and they're still performing these fucking medical procedures on children who they also admit aren't capable of understanding the process or the outcome. Like, again, how is this not criminal? I read another article in Just the News, and it was reporting on the same leaked information. And so Just the News reached out to WPATH for comment, and President Marcy Bowers wrote a statement to them. And here's what she said. WPATH is and always has been a science and evidence based organization whose recommendations are widely endorsed by major medical organizations around the world. We are the professionals who know the best medical needs of trans and gender diverse individuals, and we stand opposed to individuals who misrepresent and delegitimize the diverse identities and complex needs of this population through scare tactics. The world is not flat. Gender, like genitalia, is represented by diversity. The small percentage of the population that is trans or gender diverse deserves healthcare and will never be a threat to the global gender binary. End quote. Stephanie, like this woman is fucking unhinged. We're talking about children. How is this not fucking criminal? How are these people not in jail?
You know what this reminds me of? You know how, like, when you were in history class, you just come across things that happen in history, like what they would do to people in insane asylums or people in, different civilizations that were like pure torture. I think that's how this is going to age. I think we're going to look back on history and we're going to be telling the younger generation, like, yeah, kids that were gay, boys that were more feminine, kids that were autistic or had sexual trauma, they cut off their genitalia and like sterilize them. Like that is what is happening. And so it's like that's how these things happen throughout history. It's not, they portray it as like, oh, we're just helping, when really helping would be giving these kids some compassion. Like, what makes you think that having surgery and changing everything about you and the way you look is going to make you feel better? And why don't you feel good? And like addressing their mental health. I mean, it's just insane. And what's even crazier is all of these doctors that have been trained, they're going against everything they learned about mental health, body dysmorphia, all those things. And they're going along with the agenda and no one's standing up to it. And I mean, I just want to emphasize again, these treatments are sterilizing and mutilating children. It wasn't that long ago that we were up in arms as a whole entire country that some of these places in Africa were like mutilating young girls so they could never have an orgasm. I think they still do that across Africa and the Middle East. And we were so appalled, yet we're doing the same shit here now.
Yeah.
We're just using it under the guise of like gender affirmation. We're trying to make it sound good. And all right, this is where, like, again, my conspiracy brain goes. This has to be part of this bigger global depopulation agenda. Okay. You've got Bill Gates, the World Economic Forum, all the climate alarmist people, all admitting multiple times publicly that they want to reduce the global population. And what better way than to make the next generation infertile by removing their sex organs or giving them this medication to where they're not going to be able to enjoy sex in the future or have kids. And I was listening to an episode of Tucker Carlson where this guy, Callie Means, was discussing Ozempic and like how dangerous it is. But something jumped out to me in that interview where he said that sperm count is down 50% in just one generation, and 25% of women have PCOS. And so I was looking up some stats on this, and I saw that in 2023, the World Health Organization came out and they said that 1 in 6 people in the world are affected by infertility. That's staggering. And I know on a recent episode, Tara, you were talking about that chemical that Biden is now allowing to be sprayed on like wheat and oat products, and fertility issues is a potential side effect. So, like looking at that, what they're doing with our food, and then looking at this very public push for gender reassignment surgeries in children makes me think that maybe it's not only profit, I mean, that's obviously a motive for them, but also infertility is like the long-term goal of this whole agenda. And so it's actually a great time to be talking about this because D-Trans Awareness Day is March 12th. And the D-Trans Awareness group on TikTok posted that there's a big D-Trans support group on Reddit. And they were saying that in 2018, there were less than 100 members. And now there's more than 44,000. There's more than 44,000 members that are detransitioning because now, you know, they're out of that phase or whatever. They're realizing they made a mistake. That's horrible. That is horrible. And it's crazy because, like you were saying, you're not going to get into the graphic details, but I do think that everyone should go on social media, go on TikTok, start searching D-Trans awareness, and you will see stories of young people that are living with lifelong pain, that need expensive medication for the rest of their lives, that are dealing with unimaginable side effects, and no one is helping them. No one is there to make it better. And it's so sad because they can't go back. Like, there's no fixing this issue. This is a permanent mutilation that you can't just fix when you get older and you're out of this phase. So I think everyone needs to like see that, even though it's hard to watch, to understand what's really happening here. Yep. And then just some other news and the whole like trans LGBTQIA. So in New York, a Nassau County official, Bruce Blakeman, signed an executive order stating that transgender women cannot participate in county athletics with cisgender girls. And so, of course, the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who's the same woman going after Trump, demanded an immediate repeal of the executive order, stating, quote, "The law is perfectly clear. You cannot discriminate against a person because of their gender identity or expression. We have no room for hate or bigotry in New York," end quote. And according to the Rochester First News, Sandra Park, who is the chief of the office's Civil Rights Bureau, she says that the executive order, quote, "may result in subjecting female athletes to intrusive and inappropriate inquiries or verification requirements that will harm cisgender and transgender women and girls alike." What about the... Okay, sorry, that was the end of the quote. All right. So what I want to point out, though, is they're so focused on, they don't want to harm the transgender girls, right? What about the cisgender? I hate that fucking word, but what
I was
about
gonna say, I
the
refuse
regular
to use that word.
girls that now have to change in front of a dude, that don't have like a place where they feel safe, where they feel comfortable? What about them? What about their rights? And then what about the fact that they're losing scholarships and opportunities because they can't compete with biological males? They just can't. And we're seeing it left and right, where they're losing to guys that have long hair and are saying that they're girls. And I think, and I know I've talked about this before, but if this continues, women's sports are going to become obsolete. Within one generation, they're going to become obsolete. And so I don't know why the trans community can't just start their own league. Like, start your own thing, just like the women that worked so hard to create women's leagues. Like, why can't that just be an accepted thing? I don't get it.
I don't either. And there's a Christian school in Vermont that recently got banned from state athletics after the coach of the girls' basketball team forfeited a game against a team that had a trans player because he said it was too dangerous for the biological male to be playing against girls. And I refuse to fucking use the word cisgender. It's a fucking
Yeah, I hate it.
female, and that's all there is to it. So I'm not going to use that word. But what's really sad is like, they had conversation with the school administration, with the players, with all their parents. They all agreed they were going to forfeit the game. And then when they do, they get banned from the team being able to play at all against any school. So now the school has filed a lawsuit against state officials, and I guess we'll see what happens with that. But I mean, good on this coach and the parents and the school for standing up against this. But like you said, now the girls don't have an opportunity to compete because they're not allowed to.
Oh yeah, this could change the
And
whole trajectory of their life. I mean, a lot of them are playing so that they can go and play for a college and get a
Mhm.
scholarship. And it's just crazy. And what pisses me off is I know about all of these different stories. So there's been instances where girls are seriously injured because of, these biological guys that they're playing against. And I also know there's a lot of lawsuits going on, but when I was searching it, just doing an internet search and then also a social media search, it's all censored. The only things that would come up were like transgender and like how bad the right is and how they're bigots. No like news articles, no real coverage on what's happening to these girls throughout sports. And I know the stories are out there and I've heard them, but then they get covered up with all this nonsense. And it's really upsetting.
Well, it's like you said earlier with how quickly or how huge the D-trans awareness group has grown. Like,
Mhm.
to go from 100 members to 44,000 in a few years, that tells you right there how many people like are detransitioning and don't want to be part of this community, but you're not hearing any of that. Unless you specifically go and look for that page, you're not hearing these stories.
Right.
But I want to ask you if you heard this story. So, did you hear about what happened with the trans ambassador for Doritos?
Oh gosh, no.
Okay. So, this guy's name is Ivan Gonzalez Renedo, and he's a Spanish electronic music star, but he goes by the name Samantha Hudson. And this dude fucking puts Dylan Mulvaney to shame. Like, this is graphic. He openly advocates for the destruction and annihilation of the traditional nuclear family, and he's a self-described pedophile, basically. So I saw this article in the Daily Caller. There's a video of him where he's saying this on X. And then what's way fucking worse is the shit that he posted on Twitter a few years ago. So he made these posts and he deleted them, but you know how things never fully disappear from the internet? Well, this dude is 24 years old, but when he was 16, he went on Twitter and he posted, quote, "I want to do thuggish things like stick a 12-year-old girl up her asshole," end quote. And then
Oh my
another tweet
God.
was, quote, "in the middle of the street in Mallorca in panties and screaming that I'm a nymphomaniac in front of a super beautiful 8-year-old girl," end quote. So
What the
this was,
hell?
yeah. Yeah, and this was all, it's all in Spanish, but it was all translated and there's photos of these tweets. And so this guy has also openly mocked victims of child rape. He outright laughs about it. So all this shit came out on Monday, and Doritos apparently cut ties with him. So once again, we have a woke company pushing the trans agenda with a branding campaign. But I will give them credit because they immediately put out a statement after these tweets resurfaced, and they said, quote, "We recently released a content series with Samantha Hudson, a local influencer. After the campaign started, we were made aware of Samantha's deleted tweets from around 2015. We have ended the relationship and stopped all related campaign activity due to the comments. We strongly condemn words or actions that promote violence or sexism of any kind," end quote. So at least they did not, try to come up with excuses or just stay silent and give no response like Bud Light did. But then again, like Dylan Mulvaney didn't post that he wanted to fuck a 12-year-old girl in the ass. So I guess like there's hopefully still some limits to the woke agenda, especially when it comes to losing profits. But
You
like
know,
that's crazy.
I think this highlights a much bigger issue with this whole trans community. I think that there are a lot of pedophiles. I don't
Yes.
think that Dylan Mulvaney is a real trans person. I think this is a person that's like a fucking creepo. Like he wants to be a 12-year-old girl. He acts, talks, and dresses like he's a 12-year-old girl. Like this isn't normal, and they're appealing to young girls. So it's like if you were
Yeah.
some child predator, this would be the perfect way to not only do that, but be openly accepted in the process by this whole community.
Yeah,
Sick.
it's very disturbing. And like you brought up Tucker Carlson earlier, and I'm going to bring him up again because I just finished listening to his podcast from Thursday morning, and it came out a couple hours before we're recording this. So I don't know if you've seen it yet, but he went to Romania. He did a 2-hour interview with Andrew Tate. And I fucking love Andrew Tate. And if you guys don't know who he is, go look him up. He's got tons of videos on YouTube and TikTok, but he's basically like a very popular influencer among young men. And women love him too. Like this guy is attractive and sexy and self-confident and wealthy, and he tells men the truth about what women really want in a man, and I will say he is dead on correct with that. But this guy has like very decent morals and values. He doesn't give a fuck what people think. He's become really outspoken, I think, since COVID. Like when they started with the whole destruction of freedom, he started speaking out about that and manhood. And basically, his platform is like he tells guys that they need to be more stoic and not be victims and not be emotionally weak and take control of your own life and have self-respect and dignity, act like a real man, work hard, don't make excuses for shit, be physically and mentally strong, consistently work to improve yourself, do good things for humanity, be capable of helping people, protect women, like all the shit that men have traditionally done for hundreds of years until the past couple of decades with this ramped up gender fluidity agenda to demasculate men. And the left hates him because he's very outspoken about boys becoming men. And like we always say, this goes against the global agenda of weakening men. And like, if you think he's bad because he's involved in this ongoing human trafficking case in Romania, right? He was in prison for months. He's on house arrest now. But if you listen to this interview with Tucker, there's no actual evidence of any human trafficking in this case at all. All of the alleged victims have publicly stated they aren't victims and were never trafficked. And the whole thing is like really sketchy. And he's an American citizen and a British citizen because his dad's from America, his mom's from the UK. And we know that America and the UK are both pushing this woke LGBTQIA XYZ agenda. And so neither one of the country's embassies have done much to help him with this case because they want him to be in prison so he can't continue to speak out and be a positive influence on men. And I think his dad was actually like a CIA operative at some point or something like that, and like a famous chess player. But anyway, he at some point he was grew up in the UK and moved to Romania. Like this was after he became a kickboxer. He became super wealthy. Like the guy has his shit together. And I love him, so I was excited to hear this interview, and I know that Tucker has interviewed him in the past as well. But they talked about multiple issues, but one of the things they discussed was this agenda to get rid of manhood through pushing the trans agenda. And I want to play a couple of clips from the interview. And just with this first clip, there's like a slight weird pause in the middle because Tucker's transitioning with a quick break, but it was like 10 seconds. So I'm just going to let it play. It's kind of a long clip, but I think it was a really important conversation.
So why are women miserable? Because where are they going to get their happiness from? Where are they going to get their emotional stability from? It's not their job. I don't believe it's a woman's job to be emotionally stable. It's a woman's job to do many other very important things that men can't do. More important, they're better than men at a lot of things, women are. But it's our job to be emotionally stable. Women are better than us at certain things. We're better at other things. And that's why as a team, we're so powerful. To sit and pretend we're all the same the whole way through, then why do we even need each other?
Well, I don't think we do.
Exactly it. And this is why we have birth rates declining, porn, women who are running around sharing one man with no intention of having children, marriage is gone. Like, where do we think this is going to end? And what's interesting about
Well, it ends with the training thing, right?
Completely. Yeah. That's the ultimate.
No, I'm serious though. Is it? I mean, if there's no, I mean, scrambling the idea of the gender binary of sex differences like that is kind of the end point, isn't
Well,
it?
the end point is, yeah, men are the same as women, so it doesn't even matter.
Right.
I can be a woman today, be a man tomorrow. None of it matters anymore. I also think a large part of this transsexual movement, I think a large part of it is a deliberate attack on us and our senses because they're trying to convince us to ignore our eyes. I do believe that is a bottom line. I think the bottom line of slavery are your own senses. Like, no matter what I'm told that it's cold outside, I feel warm. That's the bottom line. So once they can convince you that your senses are wrong, well, then you're completely open to the slave program. Once you can look at something with your eyes and ignore your eyes, you're a prime candidate. So I think a lot of this has also something to do with that. You are going to say that's a girl. That's what you are going to say because you have to. And if you say it long enough, you'll think it. And if you won't, your children will because we'll tell them. So eventually, you're going to say it. Then it becomes true. Then you ignore your eyes. Now you believe anything, right? Till the next thing comes along. Now you'll believe all the people on the jets telling you about climate change. It's all an attack on the senses.
This is America's most famous admiral.
You know, it's such an important issue for our youth and adults. As you said, some of these laws are actually extending into adulthood. You know, we often say that gender-affirming care is healthcare, gender-affirming care is mental health care, and gender-affirming care is literally suicide prevention care. Would that be your view as well?
I 100% agree.
It's genuinely, I want to actually genuinely give my heartfelt condolences to any young person who falls for this crap, because you're going to be so miserable for the rest of your life. If you chop off your genitals, take a whole bunch of chemicals as a teenager, you are going to be miserable for the rest of your life.
Yes.
You're never going to be the person you want to be. You're never going to be accepted as that person. You're never going to feel happy inside. If you fall for this, I genuinely feel sorry for you too. That's the first thing I'm going to say. The second thing I'm going to say, I find it very interesting that the only surgery we call affirming is gender surgery. Imagine a girl woke up and said, I was born in the wrong body because my tits are small. I'm a big titted woman, but I was born in the wrong body. I need tit affirming care. I need to affirm my true body shape. Otherwise, I have a mental health problem. No, it's plastic. It looks good, perhaps, whatever. But we would never say she was born in the wrong body and we had to affirm her genuine body experience.
Her triple Ds.
Yeah, her triple Ds had to be affirmed. It's garbage. You're not affirming anything. And also, I think it's kind of interesting. They say that trans people commit suicide at a higher rate. That's sad. Nobody should kill themselves. I would hate for anybody to kill themselves. They say that's because they're picked on for being trans. I don't know why anyone's ever had the argument that perhaps they have a mental instability before this trans stuff, and that's why they're more prone to suicide in the first place.
Seems like an obvious explanation.
Seems like an obvious explanation. I don't think it's normal for anybody to want to mutilate themselves. I think if someone were to come to me and say, I really want to cut my hand off, I would think they had a mental illness. Why? Don't like it. What do you mean you don't like it? I don't like my hand. I don't want it. I would think that's very concerning. So I really, truly feel sorry for any young people who fall for this. I don't blame them. I think it's a massive psyop. And I think if you fall for it, you're going to be miserable forever. And one more point I'll make on this whole thing I found very interesting. I'm a professional fighter, so I spent a lot of time in Thailand when I was fighting. Kickboxing's big over there. And I've always thought, no one's ever mentioned that Thailand has a bunch of ladyboys, right? But if you say to a ladyboy, are you a man or a woman? She goes, I'm a ladyboy. What's that? I'm a man, but I'm a ladyboy. They don't see themselves as women in the real sense of I am female. Right. They don't want to compete against women in sports. They don't want to pretend they can have kids. They don't talk about having periods. They're like, oh, I'm a ladyboy. It's like kind of like an in-between. It's got its own thing.
India has the same.
Yeah, it's fine. Nobody over there is genuinely arguing that they are actually female. Only in America are we doing that. And that's what's the craziest thing of all. Even if you truly, truly believe you need to change gender and you truly believe it's the right path for you and you believe you're not being psyoped and you believe you're going to be happy and you believe you need to mutilate yourself, that's all fine. But then to come along with the hubris and arrogance to tell me that I have to pretend you're something you're not.
Yes.
Biologically.
That's right.
That's absolutely and utterly arrogant. You can't tell me what I have to call you, right? I'm allowed to come to my own conclusions and opinions. And the whole point of being a human is that we've gone through life long enough to identify patterns. Imagine humans didn't identify patterns.
Okay, you get the point.
Yeah, and he's spot on. I think it is one big psyop. Like it's not, nothing about this is normal. And what's crazy to me is how many normal people with that should have common sense are just going along with it because they're being told to and they're not questioning it. And here's the thing, like if you look at the podcast charts or social media or really anything, it's crystal clear that people want more masculine role models. Of course, you have Joe Rogan at the top. Now you have Tucker, Jordan Peterson, Matt Walsh. Basically, every other like conservative or masculine voice are doing so well right now. And I think that that's showing that young men and boys need that. They're looking for that because it's missing in our society right now. And think about it. If you want to weaken a nation and keep them from revolting, you would target the men, right? Because they're the ones that are going to fight back and defend their country. And here's our country not only bringing the whole LGBTQ agenda into the military to attract non-masculine men, but now they're literally putting stuff in our food to fuck with testosterone and fertility. And then again, like they are cutting off the genitals of men that, you know, children, boys. It's fucked up. And it's gone like so far, so fast. And again, how are more people not openly talking about this? I mean, we're talking about children. Like you would think if people are going to speak up about anything, it would be about children. And I love that these more masculine men have platforms to be role models for the youth. And I do think it's working. And we're seeing that like when they're doing these surveys of high school students, they're finding that the majority of boys are leaning more and more conservative, more and more to the right. And that's a shift from where we were just a few years ago. And I think it's because of people like Andrew Tate, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson. So that gives me some hope because things are pretty bad right now.
Yeah. And so like after that one clip I played, Tucker posted a video of a recent Pride parade in New York, and he asked Tate what he thought about that. And I agree with what he had to say. And so I want to play this clip too. It's not quite as long.
Makes sense anymore.
This is a video from a recent Pride March in New York. I'm interested in your view of it.
So I have a few points on this. The first point is that it is an unfortunate reality, and I'm not going to be called a bigot. I'm going to talk about the reality that the homosexual community cannot reproduce in and of themselves. So for them to have a community into the future, they do need your children. That's how they think. For there to be a homosexual community in 100 years from now, they need straight people's kids because only straight people have children. So they're telling the truth. That's the first thing. They mean what they say. The second thing is, I think a lot of this is an attention grab by them. I think they are slightly disappointed in how tolerant many people actually are. I have no problem with gay people. I don't care. I'm gay. Cool. I want to get married. Fine. I'm going to wave my dick in your kid's face. Wait a second.
Yeah.
They push it to a point where we have to react. And then when we react, they say we're bigoted. Children are innocent, and destruction of innocence is one of the most disgusting things on the face of the planet. It's terrible if a child is killed in a war. It's terrible if a child's mind is warped by any propaganda mechanism. They're innocent. What I don't understand is why, imagine heterosexual men walked around naked saying we're coming for the children.
Well, someone gets shot
Absolutely. So why is it when
for
you have
good reason.
completely? So as soon as there's this sexual orientation, they're completely protected. And I think that the whole point of having children as a whole is to instill them with your worldview. I know if I have children, I want them to be like me. We just talked about my last name and how I want them to honor me into post-death. Then I want them to be a representation of me, which means they should believe in my values and my creeds. Why is a group of people in New York walking around telling me what they're going to teach my kids and what my kids should believe? They're not your kids, they're my kids.
Right.
And that's what's so scary, because children are impressionable and children are raised by the state and the internet effectively, which is why they want me off the internet. But they'll let a lot of people stay on the internet that say a lot about a lot of things. I'll argue that if I was transgender, the American embassy would have told Romania they were bigoted and removed me pretty quickly. I would genuinely argue that point. They would say, no, what you're doing is abusive to the LGBT community. He must be removed from jail.
Of course, immediately.
Immediately. But because I'm straight and heterosexual, it doesn't matter. We're the class that suffers the biggest bigotry that possibly exists in the Western world today. I would actually argue that point. But they're saying this to be deliberately provocative. They're deliberately trying to upset people. They want to upset you so that when you talk against it, they can call you names and call you a bigot. And also they mean what they say. And it's truly scary.
It is. It's truly scary. And if you didn't hear that beginning of that clip in the New York Pride thing, they were screaming like, we're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children. And we've seen clips of that before.
It's so disturbing. I feel like we're heading more and more towards this world where parents don't have say over what happens to their kids. They lose all their parental rights.
Right. And another thing they talked about earlier on in the podcast was how the trans agenda is related to the migrant crisis. And I'm not going to play another clip because I've played enough, but essentially they were talking about how, you know, the trans agenda and weakening of manhood go hand in hand, because we're allowing these millions of illegals into the country. And now we have this culture of weak men who aren't going to be able to defend the country against a culture of men who've grown up like basically having to fight for their existence instead of having their minds infiltrated with gender fluid nonsense telling them it's bad to be a man. And so when like the war comes or the famine comes, when they wipe out our farming resources in the name of climate change, who are women going to be looking to lead us? They're going to be looking for men, and there aren't going to be any fucking men. And Tate also brought up how if you look at competing countries, they're still very firm in their gender roles. So he's right. Like if you look at China or Russia, our biggest adversaries all value traditional roles of men and women. They all have very strong, effective militaries. And at this point, we don't, because we've been pushing this DEI agenda that has completely weakened our military. And when you look at that in comparison to the countries that we're on the brink of going to war with, like that's really fucking scary.
Yeah, it's pretty alarming. People need to wake up already. It's crazy.
Yeah. But since it's Friday and we try to end on a positive note on Fridays, I'm going to end with this because it's a win for freedom. So the Daily Signal reported that a district court ruled on Monday that the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission violated the First Amendment when they attempted to force religious healthcare workers to provide trans surgeries. So this was all related to a lawsuit that was brought by the Christian Employers Alliance against the EEOC back in 2021, and it had to do with a mandate requiring employers to pay for gender reassignment surgery and requiring doctors to perform the procedures. And this mandate also demanded that employees and doctors must speak positively about the surgeries, even if they objected to them. So that was ruled, like the court ruled against it. I'm very happy about that. It's a small win, but
you know what? That does make me feel better, Tara. Yes. Ending with that. It really does.
It's and usually you trying.
Yeah. Don't you think we're going to see more like wins like that? Because the whole thing I was thinking about when I was doing notes for this episode was back when I was a pharma rep. I remember talking to doctors about this, and it was like this thing where you'd have a group of doctors and they would talk about like how many babies they've delivered like throughout their career. And I was talking to one and he's like, after medical school, none. I absolutely refuse. And I was like, interesting. Why? You just don't like, that whole experience or what? And he was like, no, it's one of the most dangerous things a doctor can do. And I said, really? Like, why? And he said, so let's say that the mother is having complications. And it could be anything. Maybe her blood pressure spiking and we have to give her a certain medication, or maybe the baby's not coming out and we have to use forceps, whatever it is. He said, I could sit there and I could talk to the parents and explain the risks of what I'm about to do. And I could even have them sign a document saying they understand the risks and they still want to move forward. And it could be this thing is the only thing that's going to save this baby. He said, but let's say the baby comes out and there's something wrong. Maybe it's as little as like they're autistic or something. When that baby turns 18, they could sue me. They could say, well, because that doctor did this thing and I didn't consent to it, I am now going to sue you. And so I was thinking about that with this whole trans agenda, because I'm like, if that's the case, which I've asked a lot of other doctors, because that was so interesting to me and they said it is, then these kids are going to start suing. And Chloe Cole, who's like one of the biggest people for this, because she transitioned at 16, she wants to get married and have children. And unfortunately, she probably won't be able to. She's dealing with a lot of horrible side effects. And she is suing the biggest hospital system that's doing this. And guess what, Tara? It was like totally censored. No articles on it. They're covering the whole thing up. But I bet that as soon as doctors and hospital groups start getting sued when all these kids turn 18, that's when they're going to decide, you know what, maybe we shouldn't do this anymore, because it all comes down to profit for the doctors and hospitals. The government may want it for having weakness and not having masculine men. The doctors and the hospitals want it because they're making a shit ton of money on it. And it's great to see that lawsuits are taking place. And I think that's what's going to get them to stop agreeing to do these surgeries.
Yeah, until something happens like with COVID, where they don't allow you to sue the pharmaceutical companies, they won't allow you to sue the doctors. And if the Biden admin or their equivalent remains in office, I can totally see that coming down the pipe. Not only taking away rights from parents, but taking away right from people who want to detransition.
Well, I can't wait to see this Chloe Cole case, because that'll set the precedent for whether or not kids can do this. And I wouldn't be surprised if they've already put some kind of change in place that we don't know about, that they slipped through one of these bills or whatever. So I don't know, but it'll be interesting. I do think we'll see less of this in the future. I think more and more people are waking up. I think it's important that we're talking about these issues. And I think for everyone listening, it's important to educate people, to talk about this, to openly say this is wrong. I mean, it's black and white. Like, there's no in between here. Like, it's wrong. You don't do this to children. And I think we all need to start talking about that a little bit more. So, thanks for sharing that positive story to end with. And I hope everyone has a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.